Today, we're going to be talking about the fascinating and complex world of relationships shaped by cultural differences. Because as our societies become more interconnected, so many couples find themselves navigating the rich tapestry of diverse cultural backgrounds, beliefs, and traditions. And while these can enrich your partnerships, they can also present some challenges, communication barriers, differences in values, and societal pressures as well. And today we're going to be looking at how these factors play out in real relationships. And we're excited to be joined by Katie Rössler, author of The New Face of Grief and Giving Birth to Motherhood, books which have touched lives globally. She's also the host of the podcast, The Balance Code for High Achievers, which looks at life balance and achievement. So firstly, Katie, warm welcome. Great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into this conversation, especially with the two of you, and being able to, bring some awareness to couples who maybe hadn't thought about this part of their relationship in great detail.
Absolutely. It's such a fascinating area. And just to finish, I guess, the intro to yourself, you're in a cross-cultural relationship yourself. Is that right? You're an American, but living in Germany. Tell us about that briefly, please.
Yeah. I'm American. I've been living in Germany for 8.5 years. I fell in love with a tall, handsome stranger with an accent, and he brought me up. No, we decided together to move to Germany, but my husband is German, and we have three children that we're raising really bilingual, bicultural, understanding that they, even though we live in one country, that they actually kind of are a blended mixture of two cultures.
That's so fascinating. I'd love to hear more about that as we go through the conversation. And just for people that don't know, Rebecca and I are also in a cross-cultural relationship
Right.
as an English and Spanish couple
Yeah.
living in Wales.
Right.
Also had a previous long-term relationship with someone from a different country
That's
as
right.
well.
And you have
Um,
children from
and my
France.
children from that relationship, they're French speaking. So yeah, definitely lots of things that we can touch on here, as well as obviously from our working experience. So yeah, really excited to have this conversation. The first thing I'd love to ask is, how do you think the communication barriers from these cultural differences can play out and impact on relationships?
Yeah, so one of the key ways I see them playing out is what's allowed to be shared or not shared in your culture. And this can be gender specific within your culture as well, but let's just talk culturally. Are emotions able to be more openly shared? Are they expressed through passion? Are you supposed to be more closed up and quiet and reserved? This is where I find that couples butt heads the most, right? There's usually one who's like, no, we don't show it that to that level, and the other who's more, hey, I want to share what I feel and what I think, and we should be able to do this very openly. So our communication dynamics are greatly impacted by the culture that we grew up in, what was accepted and not, and how we're supposed to handle our problems, our challenges, right? How we are even able to enjoy successes. There are some cultures that you just move on to the next goal, you don't really celebrate. And so if you're in a partnership where you're the one who's like, no, we celebrate where I come from, and your partner's like, no, you move on to the next thing, like it's almost like being too self-involved to focus on yourself, right? Some of the Asian cultures have that mindset. We move on to the next goal, you're always doing more. There's a struggle for them. Well, how do we celebrate our progress? How do we enjoy these things? So these dynamics fascinate me. They impact communication on a regular basis. And most couples, I find, they're aware they come from different cultures, but they think it's personality differences. They think, well, you're just more this and I'm more this. And they forget to really look at the cultural implications for why they might habitually act the way they do or
Mm,
respond the way they do.
such a great point. I comment on that.
Me too,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was just going to say, I really resonate with the point about the level of expression. And I guess it's not only about culture, as in like nationality and so on, but just our culture and our families as well. Even within the same sort of the same country, families have very different cultures, don't they, within the family? And
Mhm.
that level of expression or how we express emotion, particularly, is such a key one, isn't it? Some people just grow up normalizing that you don't really talk about emotions, for example, and then others are much more expressive. I'm just going to get your thoughts on how do you think that impacts on someone? Let's say if you're very expressive and you feel that you can't express that emotion in some way because it's more, well, it's not appropriate in some way.
I find that couples where there's that dynamic happening, one of them feels like It's kind of like they're kind of being choked without being choked, right? Like I'm not allowed to express this. Like they feel like they've lost the words that they usually have. And so it can make you feel smaller than you really are, right? You feel like you have to contain yourself. And none of us want to live in that feeling of like, I can't be myself. So, when I'm working with a couple like that, one of the things I really talk about is how do we meet each other in the middle? How do we get the partner who maybe is not comfortable with the passion and the showing and the expressing to, calm their nervous system when their partner presents with that? Because a lot of it's just uncomfortability, right? Like we're just like, oh, I don't know how to sit with this. I don't know how to respond. And then how do we give that partner the skills to start to do that? And
Mm.
the partner who comes as the maximizer, right? The emotion here, how we can help them to still express themselves, but find a way to do it that their partner can receive and hear rather than a sensation of, I have to hold everything back inside of me. I see this, even in, and Rebecca, you can speak to this better, but so in Spanish speaking countries, men versus women, sometimes there's some things that men might feel more comfortable expressing the anger that they have, and that's acceptable. But the women are more like, well, I want to show the love and the passion too. And they don't always meet eye to eye on that. And with the couples I work with right now who are like that, I'm always like, you guys know how to show emotions, but they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's about getting comfortable with being able to show all of the emotions and really being able to honor and respect your partner as they express that, knowing you didn't do anything wrong or you don't have
Mhm.
to fix anything or act in any certain way because they express it. So it isn't even just that within a culture, I'm saying it is within a culture that you can have differences, gender or family or things like that around, am I allowed to say this? Do I have to hold this in and not be myself?
That's right. Well, I was thinking, I thought of what you said that people tend to think that it's due to a personality and these differences. And I'm just searching in my mind, thinking, well, I know people in Spain and definitely my family who definitely don't hold back to express anything they're feeling. And and I also know people who actually hold back a lot. So not sure where is the personality or the culture, like you're saying, you are the expert, but I've seen everything, even in men and women, there's no difference really. I mean, some men hold back, some men are all out, and women the same. So it's quite confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that every culture has not stereotype, because I don't like that word, but a generalization of
Definitely,
what is
yes.
normal, right? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I noticed it very quickly when I came to the UK for the first time 15 years ago, and I was in the post office just talking to my sister and very excited. Hey, Mary, I'm gonna get my insurance number. And then the guard in the door looked at me very seriously and kicked me out because he said I was quite loud.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, welcome to the UK.
As an American sitting in the line at the grocery store, I'm used to being able to chit chat with people. I'm used to like, hey, oh, that looks nice. Oh, what are you making tonight or whatever. In the German culture, no, you don't do that. It's, you're holding up the line, you're taking up time, you're wasting my time. Why are you speaking to me? I don't know you. So there's just these cultural things, whereas I can find one or two maybe who would talk to me. I'm in an international city in Munich, Germany. So inevitably somebody's like, you're American. Like
Mm.
I'll chat with you, or I've lived in America, I'll chat with you. But yes, there is this thing when you bring yourself into a new culture, and it's the same in the relationship, right? You bring yourself into a new culture that they will point out the things about you that they see that make you culturally different, where you might just be like, I'm just being me.
That's right. I went to Orlando a few years ago in 2019, and I didn't expect this, but I suddenly found myself surrounded by uh, super lovely, friendly people, Spanish speaking, Latin American, English people as well, American ones. I just felt like drinking water when you're thirsty.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like so familiar. They were so familiar in how they were expressing themselves and I was saying in Spain, I was in Orlando.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find really interesting for couples is if they meet in a country that's more like that, more welcome and opening, right? That's where my husband and I met. And we
Mhm.
moved back to his home country that isn't always that way. It takes a year or so before you become even a friend to someone. Like it's very guarded. Your partner also changes. You change, right? Like we have different personalities where we're in that situation of like, gosh, it's like I'm drinking water when I'm thirsty. And then situation
Mhm.
where like it's a drought. Like how to
Definitely.
act. And I often, share that I had to learn my German husband versus my German husband in America. Because that's who I fell in love with. That's where we lived for over 6 years together. That's where we started our family and our careers. And then we moved to Germany, and slowly over time, I was like, who is this man? Like, who are you? The way you're acting, the way you're being is so much like the people around us, but it's things you don't like.
Mhm.
Mm.
And so sometimes we fall back into ways, and there are things about me as American wife in Germany, he's had to adjust to. We change with our environments. And so often with couples, what I'm teaching them when there's that shift, that move, even if it's a move to a brand new country they both are not from, you will change. You naturally will change, and it will shift to different ways, especially if one of you returns to the other's home country. There'll be
Mm.
some shifts you don't expect. And it's a relearning phase. It's not that they're, bad or mean all of a sudden or things. It's just an adapting to who this person is in
Adapting.
their
Mm.
comfort zone in a sense, right? They know the bureaucracy, they understand the people, even if they don't like it. Whereas we're learning it as outsiders. When
Mhm.
my
Mm.
husband was in the States, he asked me tons of questions all the time. And I felt like I had to represent my culture. Like, I don't know why we do this. We just do. And here I am, here in our first year, I was like, honey, where do we get Christmas trees for the holidays? And he's like, I don't know. Because he was like 16, 17, 18 when he lived in this area. So it's not like he was like, I know exactly where the Christmas trees are. There
Right.
were things that I assumed he would just know because he's from here.
That's right.
And that's not how it works. And then we get frustrated that our partner isn't telling us all that, helping us. So there's so many different nuances to cultural differences and then where we choose to live and
Uh-huh.
start our
Mm.
lives together.
I do recognize that, Katie. I go to Spain sometimes, and people expect me to take them to places to know this and that, and I'm like, wow, everything has changed. And I am not the person that left the country 15 years ago. I've changed as well. Like you said, I'm definitely more cautious, polite, and like, more like English type. And
Yeah.
people also tell me. And yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. It definitely rings the bell.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask about like when if you arrive in a situation and you start to get a sense that like the person that you are is
Mhm.
somehow not quite welcome or not quite right the way you are, and you try to then adapt. I just wonder whether you think that's, I guess it's a natural thing, isn't it, to adapt to your environment? But what do you think? Would you say it's intrinsically a healthy thing to do or more of a challenging thing?
I think that's a subjective question, right? If somebody's like, actually, it made me a better person to adapt, great. But if you feel like you're having to stifle your humor, that's a big one I hear a lot. Like, I had to change my humor. Like, this, you guys don't get my jokes. And they feel like a part of them, especially if they were the joker of their family or their friends back home, they feel like they have to hide a part of themselves. That's where it becomes sort of detrimental, right? Because we don't feel authentic.
That's
So I
right.
always encourage people, even if you live in a small town or a small city, you're going to find someone who's able to get that joke, right? You're going to find, but you're going to have to do some work to find that. So it's great that we adapt, but we have to be mindful that we're not doing a total 180 because
Mhm.
that's not true to us either. So maybe sitting down and going like, what are the values and things that are important to me? And how do I really surround myself with kind of a tribe of people who think similarly, enjoy the same things? And, we are fortunate to live in a really big city that is international. So it is easy for us to find what I like to call other triangles. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept. I'm a triangle, but it's this mentality of where our home country is. We're conditioned to be circles, right? And that's how we are. And we move to a new country, they're all squares. They have different, ways of doing things and traditions. Even if they might seem similar, they have their own colloquial phrases, they have their stuff, right? when we move, we're eventually stop being a circle. We adapt, right? And we start to become a triangle. So we're not a square, but we're not a circle. And this explains why when we go back to our home country, we don't always feel like we fit in there too, because we see the world a little bit differently. We see different perspectives on things. And so the I Am a Triangle movement started in 2013. And it was amazing that chapters were around the world. But one of the things I talk with couples about is find other triangle couples, find others who are comfortable with the fact that they don't feel grounded and rooted in just one place, that home could be in different places, and that they're more open to things and not set in their ways. And when we start to do that, then we authentically feel a little more like ourselves. We feel like we make sense.
That's such an interesting point. Yeah, I definitely think like we're both living in a place where it's not our home city, let's say, even though it's my home country, the United Kingdom, it's still away from home. And I think that gives you something in common in a way, doesn't it? Where,
Yes.
which I can let's see what you're saying, that there could be other people, maybe from completely different cultures, but with that same tendency of being away from their home place. And it gives you just a different perspective and maybe some different things that would be relevant and interesting to talk about that maybe other people may not get in the same way. So that sounds really, really great idea.
I also I also resonate with what you said, Katie, that like joining other people who are in a similar situation, it really makes you feel so much um, connected when you feel that you don't fit in, particularly at the beginning. I used to be part of something called Toastmasters, which is an international public speaking club. Matt is the director, what you call it? The
President.
president right now, or anyways.
Oh,
And it's just nice because every time I went there, I felt super connected because our chapter was super international. So everyone embraced everyone, and there was so much richness. And so that's one thing. And the other one is that, which you also mentioned, that I actually think at the beginning I felt I didn't fit in, I didn't feel very well here. But anyway, I had my purpose, and I finally realized that if you are in the country where you are right now, that there's a gift that you have. I want to look at it this way. There's a gift that you have that God wants you to give to those people or the universe or whatever you want to call it. And I remember that at the beginning, I used to feel, well, I don't fit in very well with my clients. They're more different than I am. I'm different. But now I'm thinking, actually, I realized that not everyone, but many of my clients need courage, permission to be themselves, to be bold, to be authentic. And actually, I don't want to shrink down anymore or fit in. The universe has brought me to the UK. I want to share my gift. And I love mixing. And also, I'm definitely getting the gift from other people in this country here, like to not to be so all out sometimes. It's important.
No, I love that. I mean, you're exactly right. There are organizations and groups around all the countries, right? I love Toastmasters. I have many friends who do Toastmasters, and it's just a space where we're allowed to be embarrassed safely, right? Some of that when we change cultures is there's the embarrassment of like, did I say that right? Did I do that right? Especially if you're learning a whole new language. But in Toastmasters or groups like that, Lions Club and things where it's like, no, come. We're all learning together. We're figuring out a new skill set, right? Toastmasters is we're learning how to speak with confidence and on the fly and all of these things. You're going to make mess ups, but they're there to encourage you through it, right? And give you feedback and constructive criticism. So groups like that are absolutely amazing. And then, yes, it is a total gift. I think about the fact that I could be that, tall glass of water for somebody who's in that drought in their phase of life here when I smile at them in the neighborhood and wave, and that they don't know me and I don't know them, but I just want to smile at them because that's what I would do at home. And I just have to remember that I am placed here for a reason. So my partner and I together, we chose this for a reason. We felt led here for a reason. And that has an impact. It has a ripple effect. We often think of the victim role of it, like, oh, I'm not able to be myself, or I'm not enough, or, I can't learn the language or the problems with this and that. But that keeps us in that victim mindset. If we're able to say, what can I bring to this culture too, as I learn from it? Germans are very orderly. I don't tend to be very orderly. I'm getting way better. I have to, right? German bureaucracy will make sure you are orderly, but I'm learning the strengths of the things I can pull from this culture, recognizing there's negatives in both my culture and the culture here and all the cultures I visit. I can take the gifts or I can just focus on what's not working for me.
Makes
That's
sense.
right.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's a
Yeah.
good question. I'd love to come on to like relationships and like people's understanding of love and whether you think that varies really across different cultures, like what may be looked at as love in a certain culture or context may not in another. And yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and we could talk culture and we can also talk generational differences. Many couples are getting married where one is in a certain stage of life and another's another stage. So we can look at this from different angles. Yes, I do believe that there are some cultures that still see marriage as a very practical union, right? And there are even cultures that it's still arranged. So we have to look at those couples and say, how are they impacted by other cultures that say, marry for love, marry, romance and passion, and like kind of go that route? And what are the things that we can gain from both sides, looking at both of them? We look at marriage in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s tend to be practical. This is a practical partnership. You're going to be able to provide for me and I can take care of this and stuff. And over time, we started going, no, I really want love and passion. And now there's couples therapy and there's this like, wait, let's really work on our relationship and grow together. And not every culture is there yet. Not every culture is there yet. And we may fall in love with somebody who's from that culture that's kind of like, yeah, I fell in love with you, but now this is practical. And we're like, where's the passion? Like, I want more.
Yeah.
And so that's where it can get really a challenge. Another layer of challenge that I think we should bring up, and I know you guys have experienced this too, is when in someone's culture, it is looked down upon to get help if your marriage is not going well or your relationship is having challenges. You should be able to figure it out yourself. You don't share that dirty laundry, right? You don't talk about those things.
Yes.
And that's leaving so many people isolated to feel like, but I have problems. So what do I do? And they kind of try to read the books or watch the videos or listen to the podcast. But sometimes you really need to go and work with someone
Yeah.
who can give you an objective standpoint and then tools. But there's a lot of cultural baggage there and family baggage to work through to even get to the point to say, I need help and I'm willing to ask for it. And when you've got two people, you've got to get through both people's stuff to be able to get to that point. And that can be so hard. And I know, I'm sure you guys with couples have seen that too, where it's like, and you'll hear, man, I wish we'd come to you a year ago. And the partner's like, I told you, right?
Right. I'm not
But
going to tell you I told you.
yeah, but it's a struggle. It's a struggle to break those cultural norms. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I like the way you frame that. There's a sort of evolution that you've described there. The image that came to my mind as you were talking, Katie, is that little thing of like a chimpanzee as it like gradually stands up, and you've seen
Yes.
that image,
Yeah.
and then it eventually finds itself as a human at the end. And I guess we can be at different phases
So
of
true.
that. And like within a certain culture, let's say in the UK, there'll be people that are at different stages of that journey, and some of it could be generational, but also educational and just mindset, you know.
Yeah.
I know in the States, I've been curious to get your view on this because we have some clients from the States, and we tend to find that the conversations that we have with people over there, although I'm sure this isn't everyone even so, but there just tends to be a bit more openness to that, like working on it mentality, that more evolved, like, okay, we do need help, it's not working, we can shift it, we can do something about it. Sort of that empowerment, I found that to be quite, yeah, it probably varies across, within cultures, but definitely across cultures as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I do think in North America in general, because you've got Tony Robbins, Mel Robb, you've got all these people who are coming out and speaking about other topics, not just relationships, but betterment of self and emotional intelligence. And we're like, yes, yes. And then you've got like the Gottmans and you've got Esther Perel and Brene Brown are coming about more emotional intelligence in the relationship and how can we be our authentic selves in love. And it's like, I think people are flooded with it over there, right? There's more chances to receive it on a constant basis. And here's the documentary, and here's the Netflix, and here's the book, and here's the things. But I will say, when I think about the couples I used to work with in the States and the ones I still work with, they still struggle with that patriarchy
Yes, that's
of
right.
roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, yes, they're all ready to, many of them are ready to like, let's step forward, but there's a lot of stuff there to break culturally and generationally that couples don't realize,
Mm.
or they realize and they don't understand the depths of what we've got to undo, uncondition to be able to have the type of relationship that both of them are desiring. Because, and I don't say this to put anyone down, usually one is benefiting more from it looking a certain way.
Okay. So
And even in physical action, I would say,
mm,
because typically what happens is one's taking care of the finances and one's taking care of the home and the kids, or what, like there's that sort of dynamic,
I see.
but neither's really willing to learn what the other's doing.
Exactly.
You're better at it. You just do it right. You always remember these things, right? And so it creates these dynamics that they're actually not really, they want to change, but they don't realize it will take education and learning. And that piece they don't always want to do. They're tired, they're overwhelmed. I just want him to talk to me differently. I want her to open up instead of shutting down and icing me out. Those kind of things, right?
See, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this topic, KG. Exactly. It's we just need to upgrade our software sometimes, right? I just find that nowadays, in the last, I don't know, 50 years, maybe women can do so much more than what they could do before. At least in society, we don't need to go and hunt food.
Yeah.
We just go to hunt to Sainsbury or to Tesco or to, any supermarket. And whereas I just find that, like you said, emotional intelligence, some people need to upgrade themselves
Yeah,
and to be more equal. Everyone wants to be equal. Then we need to be upgrading our softwares.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
definitely.
I was going to ask about the when you say the patriarchy, when people are like stuck in those roles that you're talking about, Katie, how does that play out in terms of the challenges that they experience? What would that look like if anyone's listening and they've got that kind of dynamic? What does it look like when that goes wrong, please?
The best example I can give is usually one of them feels like the secretary, the maid, the personal assistant, all of those roles, right? And the partner, when that is pointed out, especially if I'm the one to point out, hey, I noticed this dynamic. It sounds a lot like a personal assistant and all of these roles. And if we're talking about the patriarchy, we're talking about that male-female dynamic. Usually females like, yes, oh my gosh, thank you for putting it into words. And the male's like, I have no desire for it to be like that, but I don't know how to change it. And that's where we start. Because what has happened is our identities are wrapped up and the roles we've played in our relationship are wrapped up in this dynamic. And often it means one of them has to learn how to let go of control of what is done in the home or how it's done or what's remembered or allow natural consequences. It was forgotten. The ball was dropped. You don't need to fix it. Allow the other person to fix it, right? And I work with a lot of couples where there's that dynamic where for the woman, she's just taken so much control of the things and she knows all of it. That's why she's the personal assistant and the maid and that, I know where all the things are. And she struggles to let go and allow him to learn. And for it to take 45 minutes to do something, it would take her 10. It's okay. So it isn't always that the patriarchy still stays because one of them, the male, is like, I like this role. I'm the financial provider, and this, you do everything else. It's because it fits them. They're used to it, and it means letting go of some control. And, like Rebecca said, sometimes educating ourselves on things we didn't realize we still need to educate ourselves on, or we don't want to. In the dynamics of my family, I'm in a country, and especially in Bavaria, very Catholic, very patriarchy. It is something that you feel women are really trying to step up, and there's still this feeling of like, did you bring my beer and my food? And like, excuse me, you can get up and do that yourself, right? There's still a little bit of dynamic of that.
Mm.
Well, I had some family members die, older family. It's a grandfather, great uncle, and the wives were struggling around the finances. I don't know. I've never had to take care of, 60, 70 years. I've never had to take care of these things. I don't know what needs to be paid. I don't know where the investments are. I don't know anything. And I came home after 2 years in a row of experiencing that. And I said to my husband, I have to learn. This cannot be on you anymore. I need to learn about investments. I need to learn about our savings. I need to learn about what we're doing, what's coming in and out. This cannot fall on you anymore. Because, and this wasn't necessarily a patriarchy thing, but it just kind of fell into that space. And I said, I must learn these things. And I told him, I said, I want to travel for my work more. You've got to learn more about our kids' routines, what they need, what they're looking for, when is it time for their shots? When is it like all vaccination things? So they get to know these parts of my job that I've taken on. I call it the chief household officer. So we're co-chief household officers. We're doing this together. And if we learn these things together, you can teach me and I can teach you, then it's never a feeling that it's all on one. But with the patriarchy, there's this mindset of we have our roles, we do them well, hopefully, right? You fall in line. And it makes things work easier rather than everybody needs to learn everyone's job. But what happens if that person gets sick? What happens if they die, right? And especially if you're in another culture and you've allowed one partner who's from there to learn all the paperwork, what would happen? And that was the point where I had to take a good look in the mirror and go, where am I giving away my power and control because I'm not willing to educate myself? And I don't want to take the time. And that's a tough conversation to have with partners.
I definitely resonate with this, Katie. I mean, there have been moments when I've had conversations with ladies whose partners left them and they didn't know how to pay the bills. They didn't know anything of what you're saying, like the basics, So I like to believe that people can organize their different tasks and playing on their strengths and what each one is more comfortable to do. But I do like the idea, as you've said, that everyone knows how to do everything. It doesn't mean that they're gonna be doing everything, but just to not to feel disempowered and like to be able to show up anytime, in any situation.
Yeah. Before I had my husband, I did everything on my own already. So it's not like it's a new skill set, right? I mean, for some of us, maybe we went from being in our parents' home to being married, but nowadays that doesn't happen. We get married later. I joke with my husband that recently I've started packing the car for us. And I'm like, man, I haven't had to do this for like 6, 7 years because I was either pregnant or breastfeeding or something where I shouldn't lift. And it's like, wow, thank you for everything you've been doing, but I got it from here. I can start to do this. So, it's silly things that roles start to play out naturally because of our giftings, but it's a good reminder that at one point we did these things on our own. We can. So we don't have to rely, and no one needs to be the personal secretary. Nobody needs to be the maid. No one needs to feel these dynamics because that's where it affects the bedroom, right? If there's a parent-child dynamic of I'm constantly nagging you and reminding you to do stuff, I'm not going to be like, let's go. I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to bed alone. I want to be by myself. I'm tired of you. So I see that these types of conversations and rebuilding your relationship in the way that you both together thrive helps in so many facets and areas of our relationship that it makes sense to have discussions and ask questions about how is our cultural differences affecting us? How is our family differences affecting? What can we start to do to make our own traditions and our own way of how we want to be?
I see, that makes sense. That's right. Find your own way, I guess, consciously. I was just thinking, to what extent do you think it's good to play to our strengths? I'm thinking, for example, like when we go driving somewhere, I typically drive.
Yeah.
Not that I have to drive. Rebecca's a very good driver as well, but just typically that just feels more comfortable. And you could say, well, that's a bit unequal then, isn't it? She should drive as well. It should be more 50-50.
Well, it
What
doesn't have
do
to
you
be
think?
50-50. Do you ever go, Rebecca, do you want to drive today?
Do you want to do?
No, never. I
Right.
like driving.
You might be like, Rebecca, you might be like, I love that I can read a book while you drive. Perfect. I used to love doing road trips by myself. So there are times where I'm like, can I please be the driver today? I also have 3 kids in the back seat. I'd like to be the driver and not have to here's your water, here's your thing, and let him do that. So there's a side reason as well. But yeah, I mean, sometimes, yes, we fall into that, but be willing to ask the question, do you want me to make dinner tonight? I know you always do it. Would you like a break from that? They might say, no, I love making dinner. Get out of my way. This is my self-care. Or they might go,
Right.
yes, please.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, break it up a little bit. And sometimes you find, I like to call it chore play, right? Like sometimes when we do that, we feel seen by our partner and we're like, thank you. And hey, we want to cuddle up next to them more and love on them more because we feel loved on by being recognized for all what we're doing.
Makes sense. I wanted to come back to a point earlier, just about the expression. We said about people being much, in some cases, whether it's for cultural or family or other reasons or temperament reasons, they can be much more expressive. And I just wanted to just get your thoughts. Like, let's say my partner is very expressive and really, the anger comes out and the expression comes out and the
Yeah.
feelings come out. I just wanted to get your thoughts on like how to navigate when. Is there any danger that we could use that as an excuse almost for like bad behavior
Oh
or
yeah, like,
or
oh,
more
I'm Spanish.
abusive?
I need to express myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just really, any thoughts on that?
Right. Like I'm just a hothead. I just say what comes to mind. Yeah. That dynamic happens often in couples. And it is very easy to fall back on this is just how I am. This is how we are. This is what we did in my family.
Mhm,
But when it goes back to emotional intelligence, we
mhm,
all, no matter what country you're from or what generation you're from, need to learn emotional intelligence. Those skills were lacking for many, many years because of a variety of reasons throughout the world of why we just needed to be tough and suck it, get through the day to the next day. We were in survival mode in so many cultures, right? Now we're in a season for many that get to thrive that it's like, okay, well, let's develop our emotional intelligence so we're not just saying the first thing that comes to mind. So it can be very hard if you are the partner who's receiving someone else's, it's kind of toxicness, right? Like, I'm just going to say what I want. It's like, I call it, it's like a tornado hits. In the States, we have lots of tornadoes. Tornado hits and there's like mess left over. And the partner who's not as expressive is like having to clean up the mess. There's residue everywhere. And the tornadoes died down, feels great. I feel so good. I got all that out. You're like, so it's very hard as that partner to go, do you notice the mess you leave? Do you notice the tornado path around you and how it impacts us or me when you do that? And they may not, or they might and go, but this is just how I am. That's when it's really important to go, hey, I think we need to go talk with a coach or a counselor and just see if there's different ways we can relate because how this is working doesn't work for me and it's actually hurting us. And the hope is that that partner will go, okay, well, I'm willing to learn some new skills. Let's just see. But often there's a sense of, well, then I have to admit I might be wrong, which means I have to admit my family might be wrong. My culture might have imperfections. And there's a pride piece to that. So it might be that it takes a little time and you plant the seeds. I really think we should go get some support to help us navigate, when you're angry or when I don't know how to receive your anger. Take ownership too, right? I don't know how to receive your anger in that way.
that's right.
And then you can have a discussion with someone. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. I was wondering, Katie, I was thinking that sometimes I wonder whether it may not be that we need to learn emotional intelligence, but that we need to overcome a trauma,
Mm,
or maybe the trauma is based on neglect, where actually we need to learn empathy towards others because it's the lack of empathy towards others, not towards ourselves, sometimes towards others, that actually we don't have the willingness to learn emotional intelligence in the first place.
right. Right. I love that idea of just learning how to have empathy. I think that's amazing. I love doing a particular Imago worksheet with couples, and it really helps them to see what are the patterns they're playing out in their current relationship, right? The old ways of responding, that adaptive child that keeps coming back.
Exactly.
And often when they start to see it from that framework, the idea of having to change feels like climbing a mountain barefoot. They're like, I can't, like, there's just no way. This is how I've always been. But to have empathy for what their partner's been going through. is huge. That can be a game changer just there. Like, wow, because I remember I used to have this feeling too as a child, and now I'm putting that on you. Now I put you in that role, or I'm pointing the finger at you and blaming you for what they did. That can be huge. Awareness is such a big tool, and it can be very healing in a relationship. And then the next step, of course, is then what do we do to start to shift that? But first, it's just acknowledging and having empathy for it. Yes.
It's a great point. Yeah, bringing self-awareness and learning how the patterns that we run impacts on the people around us. So that's a really good starting point, isn't it? If we haven't the penny hasn't maybe dropped quite clearly enough
Right.
that how this pattern is affecting the people around us. And yeah, self-awareness is really going to be a great starting point. So let's say people listening, they're saying, well, that all makes sense. I'd like to become more self-aware. What kind of things can I do to work on that? What do you recommend for people?
So in the context of our culture, I would sit down with a piece of paper and just write out what are the things that your culture is known for in the people, right? In communication, in emotions, in how they deal with challenges, how they deal with triumphs, right? Listing all that out. And then you might go and kind of say, highlight, I have this, I'm like this, right? And then I would love for you to do it in the context of your partner. My partner's from this culture. Here are the generalizations I have about this culture and what I've learned, right, from them. And here's how they match that. And how your partner does this as well. And then you can come together and look at it. But through that, you can start to see this is where we're clashing. It's not that you're doing this to annoy me. It's not that you're doing this because you don't care. Some of this is about cultural conditioning, and we both have it. So how do we work on it? Again, it's just bringing things to awareness. And it starts with us being willing to be introspective before we point the finger at our partner, because it's very easy to see the other culture. Oh, y'all are like this. This is how you are. This is what you do. You're totally like your culture. But to sit down and go, how am I like my culture?
That's a great point. It may not encourage like an open, frank discussion if we start off focusing on the other person, right? It may just not flow into a nice constructive conversation in that sense.
Yes. I have learned so much about myself and my culture by living abroad. And the longer I live here, the better I understand it. And part of that is also raising kids here and going, oh, y'all's education system is different. Do I like it? Do I not? What are the pros? What are the cons? What did I grow up with? Did that system really prepare me for the world? Am I a critical thinker? No, Americans aren't always known for that, right? We're really good at like grouping everything in one way and jumping. And I've noticed that impacts my marriage when I do that. When I don't stop and have a critical mind to why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I think that way? So I had to do a lot of introspection on that. And of course, he pointed it out a few times, but it was me saying, I need to really see this, because when our partner says it, it's about a lot like our parent telling us, dress nicer, and we're like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden we go out in the dating world, we're like, I need to dress nicer.
Yeah,
right? Like, I'm gotta change
Just
this.
let's get some.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. We're going to hear it from our partner. Well, you're totally like your culture. It's not until we have the wake up call that we go, oh, wow, this actually is a detriment. Or I see the strengths of it, but here's how it can negatively impact my relationship. So go be introspective first, write it all down, get it on paper. I don't like to do just in my mind, let me think about it. Really see it in front of you. And then compare notes with your partner, because you've written out them, right? And you can like trade here's me. And here's you, and vice versa. Let me look at these things and then talk about where some of the butting of heads is happening. And how would you like to blend your cultures together or start to create something brand new?
That's such a great point, and point to wrap up actually really what we talked about, that sense that whatever bits of heritage and baggage and everything that we bring, we've got the opportunity to create something unique together. I mean, we do that anyway, don't we? But we've maybe got this opportunity to do it consciously. And I love your idea of writing down on a piece of paper and then comparing. Sounds such a positive step for people. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask thanks so much for sharing all that with us, Katie. How can people keep in touch with you or find out more about what you do?
Yeah, they can go to my website, katierössler.com. I'm very active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So Instagram is katie.rössler and LinkedIn just Katie Rössler LPC. And I know you'll have the links for them as well. And write
Absolutely.
me, share with me what you come up with from this episode, especially if you're in that multicultural relationship trying to navigate this season of life of better understanding each other. My husband and I have been together for 15 years. It wasn't until about 3, 4 years ago that I even realized, as a couples therapist, oh, I'm having to learn a new version of you. Right? Even when we're in it, we don't always notice this. You might have listened today and been like, whoa, now I see it. Reach out to Matt and Rebecca and say, hey, I'm noticing this. I need some more support, because we all have resources and tools for you guys.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, thanks again. Any final words?
No, it's been great, Katie. Very interesting conversation. Very
Thank
resonating a lot with you. And also fun talking about the different cultures. We can actually have so much fun rather than so much anger, and be playful about it and laugh at our differences and make it beautiful and enriching, really. Yeah. What can I say? Growth is my highest value. So it's always a lesson from every difference in the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice to speak with you, Katie. See you soon.
Thank
Speak to
you.
you soon. Bye.